bio picture. I'm not sure if that just says I'm a creature of habit or what there. Anyway, good morning to everyone, or good afternoon, I guess, to those of you further east. Great to see some representation across the country here, everywhere. It looks like pretty much across everywhere. I'm a Maritimer originally. I'm originally from Prince Edward Island. So those of you who are Maritimers, Newfoundland and the rest of the Maritimes there, you'll have no problem understanding me today. For everyone else across the country, what you may find is, and I always find this and mention this at the start of my presentations, as Maritimers, we tend to talk really fast sometimes, particularly when we're getting excited about something. And this is a topic I'm very excited to talk about. So if you are finding that I'm talking really fast, I have the chat open in front of me. Just you might want to ask a question, make a comment to slow me down a little bit. And just as the presentation was getting started, my monitor dropped out of me here. So if that does happen, just give me a quick moment. I'll switch over to my alternate screen. So first of all, our topic this morning is a relaxed brain being the most comfortable pillow. The value of sleep for children and adolescents. Now, the good thing about this particular topic is sleep is something that has an impact on all of us. So it is something that we'll also be tying not just to children and adolescents, but also to adults as well. So if it's not your child or your adolescent who's having problems with sleep, perhaps it's you. And if that's the case, there's probably going to be some strategies here that you'll pick up that might be helpful for you. And my goal is that if you do have some problems with sleep, that and you want some support with that, that is something that we can start practicing tonight. You know, when you go to bed tonight, maybe there's some different approaches that you can take that will be helpful for you. So if we move to the next slide, I'm going to give a bit of an overview of some of the topics we're going to be covering. So we're going to spend a bit of time talking about why sleep is important and what sleep is about, because it is an interesting thing to really think about, like, why do we sleep? And it's interesting because pretty much all organisms do some form of what we refer to as being as sleeping. But it's interesting that, you know, physiologically, there's no one specific reason that we sleep. We know systematically for our whole bodies and our minds, we need to, but if we don't sleep over a long period of time, there's no one organ that affects that makes it necessary for us to sleep. So the question becomes, why do we sleep? We're going to come to that in a moment. We're going to identify some causes of sleep deprivation, or what we refer to as sleep thieves. We are going to learn some strategies to help you and your children and your teens. For those of you who have teens, this is a workshop that I think that's really going to stand out. And those of you who have children, wait for it, because your kids will turn into teens shockingly suddenly. And once that happens, you're going to be experiencing problems with and maybe some conflict around sleep. So even if you don't have a teenager right now, you will. And if you do, there's some strategies that we're going to talk about today that will probably be a little bit helpful, at least in terms of even just the basics of understanding why teens sleep the way they do. But we're also going to focus on children from toddlers all the way through adulthood. And we're going to start here. And this is just a question. I don't have a poll for this one. I probably should have created a poll, but that's okay. You can just put your responses in the chat if you have an opportunity. Did you get enough sleep last night? Okay, so I'm just asking you, and I'm not talking about the number of hours of sleep you have. Did you wake up feeling refreshed, restored, and that you had a good sleep? Okay, I'm just taking a look here. Some no's, some yes, some nevers. Ouch. Wow, we should have done a poll on this. Interesting. And the so-so, yeah, okay. Lots of yeses, no's, yeses. Okay. So it looks like I would say, just by ballparking this, it looks like the answer is a little bit leaning towards no. That's actually not uncommon, unfortunately. We're going to talk about that in just a moment, because you know, as a society, as a collective of human beings right now, we are not getting enough sleep, broadly speaking. And we know what that feels like. We all have that experience of not having enough sleep. The other thing about sleep is it's not just a night by night thing, it's also a cumulative thing. So it builds over time. So if we look at the big picture, what about sleep over the past week or so? Have you had enough? And I'm not going to ask you to answer that question. I'm just curious and asking you to reflect on that. Do you feel that you've had enough sleep over the past week or so? Are you a person who, for example, does what we refer to as sleep bank, where you don't get enough sleep through the week, so you kind of get extra sleep on the weekend. You might sleep in a bit later. You might take a nap or two over the weekends if you have the opportunity, or maybe you just keep on running that deficit. You don't sleep bank, you just run a sleep deficit on a constant basis. It's not advisable, folks, and I'll tell you why as we go through this presentation. So if we go to the next slide, I'm going to tell you a bit about some of the reasons we need sleep. So first of all, the question even asking, do we need sleep, is not really the quite the right question, because we know we need it, but in the same way we need nutrients, like we need food in our diet. The idea of needing sleep is the same as needing nutrients. Yes, we probably take enough supplements and vitamins, and if I gave you a high nutrition mush, yeah, you would have enough nutrients. It would be enough to keep you going. But is that what you need, or do we need more than just the basics? And sleep is the same thing. Sleep is something that, we have a core base that we need to keep functioning, but we need to do better than just function, right? Like if you think about it, if you just ate kind of a high nutrient mush over a long period of time, life is not good. Life is not going to be satisfying. And we're here to enjoy our lives a little bit more than just, getting the base nutrients. So how much sleep do we need is one of the questions we're going to talk about in just a moment. And there is a difference between how much sleep you need versus how much sleep you actually get. So we're going to talk about that as we go through this as well. So the question I want to reframe this as, not so much do we need sleep and how much sleep do we need, but what is the optimal sleep for us as individuals? Everyone's a little bit different, but there are some generalities that we'll talk about. And when we're talking about what is necessary for best performance and least disruption to our emotions, to our thinking or cognitions, to our behavior, to our just overall functioning, everyone's a little bit different. Now, we know with adults, we all know the answer to this question, but I'll ask it anyway. How many hours of sleep do most adults require on average? I would say first one who answers gets a prize, but I don't have a prize to give. Okay, so we're looking at about 7 to 8 hours. Yeah, that's about right. So we're looking at about 7 to 8 hours is what the research says as well. Now, are we getting that much sleep as a society? No, we're not. Most adults are not getting 8 hours of sleep. We're in bed for 8 hours perhaps, but we're not getting 8 hours of sleep. And we all have those moments, and kids in particular have those moments where they're laying in bed and they're not sleeping. And think about your adolescents who, because of the melatonin and the way their brains work, they're in bed, say at 10, but they're nowhere near falling asleep. They're like wide awake. And as a result, it causes conflict because these parents are like, well, you have to be up for school in X number of hours. That means you need X amount of sleep. And they're like in no way prepared to sleep. We also have people who, as adults, if you were to think about your own sleep patterns, 8 hours sleep is a bit of a luxury because, we have kids, we have, jobs that are shift work, for example. We have jobs that keep us awake at night and stressors that keep us awake at night. So even though we might be in bed for 8 hours, we're not getting 8 hours of sleep. And there's, some degree of importance to getting that 8 hours of sleep, give or take, for each individual. I did a bit of a sleep journal a while back. And what I found is that I'm really good about falling asleep really fast. And there's a few apps you can use. I have one, it's I think it's just called Sleep Cycle. And it measures your breathing actually. So it's kind of creepy because honestly, a lot of apps are, but it monitors your breathing so you put your phone beside your bed, which is bad practice, but we do this anyway. So we have the app beside the bed, it measures your breathing. It tells you how long until you enter into that nice deep breathing. We're going to talk about the deep breathing as a strategy later on, kind of approach. Usually takes me 3 to 5 minutes to fall asleep, which is actually not a great thing because it tells me that I'm overtired by the time I get to bed. And when I kept my sleep journal, just tracking how many hours of sleep I'm or how many hours I'm in bed and roughly how many hours of sleep I'm getting. And I have a little test I'm going to tell you in a moment about how to tell if you're getting enough sleep or not. And this is true for your kids too. I was getting about 6 hours sleep a night over the past, say, 2 weeks or so. Not enough. On average, that's not enough. It impairs your cognitive functioning, your ability to problem solve, to think, to reason. It affects your emotionality, your impulsivity, your irritability. So we want to reduce that. We're going to talk about strategies later on. So about how to do that. So the test that I just mentioned to let you know if you're getting the proper amount of sleep or a good amount of sleep is, and I don't recommend you experiment with this too much if you have a job that you have to get to in the morning, you get kids you need to get up, that sort of thing, but try turning off your alarm. And if you wake up roughly the same time that your alarm would go off, you're probably getting enough sleep. If you sleep through that period where you would be typically expecting to get up because the alarm would get you up, but you sleep right through that, then you're probably overtired and you're not getting enough sleep. It's a dangerous experiment if you try that, on a work day, but if you try to get up and be mindful of the time you get up in the weekends, for example, that's a good indicator. I usually get up within 45 minutes of my usual wake up time, which is around 5:36 on the weekends as well. The advantage is that I can go and have a nap maybe sometime through the day too, if I can find a time to do that. But I can't do that in the weekdays, although we should, because the research shows that our best functioning folks tend to take naps shortly after what we refer to as lunchtime. So we'll come back to that point too. There's a whole bunch of stuff we're going to come back to, but we'll get through it all. If we go to the next slide, please. Okay, so like I said, there's no one reason that we sleep. It's very systematic. It affects our brains. It affects our heart. It affects our central nervous system, including our spinal cord and all that kind of stuff. It affects every system that we have. So there's no one specific reason that we sleep, but we do know that the more we sleep, the better sleep we have. It enhances performance across all areas, cognitively, so our thinking abilities again. For kids, it affects them academically. We see improvements in students with learning challenges when they get better sleep. We see people become more effective and their performance is increased. We see that with athletes as well. We see it with pretty much any profession. The more sleep, the more effective sleep, the better, the deeper the sleep, the higher the performance. It also affects our physiological performance. We're going through a pandemic right now, as you're probably aware, and not to make light of that, but it is something that we're highly cognizant of and highly aware of. Good sleep is, I would argue, one of the big three that actually acts as a preventative factor against getting more ill than we need to. So the big three, of course, being, and you know what they are: nutrition, exercise, and sleep. Sleep is the one that gets the short end of the stick sometimes, and that's unfortunate because I think it's as important as, if not even more important in some ways than exercise and nutrition, because sleep is something that affects our brains more so than the other two. Even though the other two are important, don't get me wrong, but sleep is the one that is the core for our cognitive and social functioning and those sorts of things, and emotional function. So it does help in terms of physiological. It builds our immune system. People who have better sleep have more effective immune systems. So there's lots of benefits to getting a good night's sleep. It helps us with our learning. It helps us with our memory. It helps with concentration. It supports our emotional health and our mental well-being. It enhances positive behavior and decision-making in kids. Now think about that, folks, and just think about the kids that you have or that you work with. If we just take that third bullet there, positive behavior and decision-making, we spend enormous amounts of time and money on resources to support students who have behavioral challenges. If we could reduce those behavioral challenges by even say 10%, simply through getting better sleep, we have a win. We have an absolute win. If we can improve decision-making by 10%, we are going to enhance safety in our schools and in our communities, because people aren't going to be making impulsive or poor decisions as frequently. We're human beings. We're going to make poor decisions. That's part of who we are. But it reduces the prevalence of those poor decisions. So good sleep has a ton of really good benefits. And to me, bang for buck, it's one of the most cost-effective ways of enhancing positive behavior, decision-making, emotional, mental health, social skills, all those sorts of things that we spend lots of time and money on in schools and in communities and health organizations, that we could really, if we focus on sleep, would probably go a long way to reducing those in the first place. It improves our energy levels. We all know this. It promotes healthy growth, metabolism, and immune systems, and it reduces our risk of injury. We know this because the idea of car accidents, for example, fatigue is often a factor. People are just overtired. Again, if we can get good sleep, we reduce the prevalence of car accidents, right? Or on-the-job accidents where people lose focus because they're tired and they put themselves in dangerous situations. I'm going to talk about shift work in just a moment, and that's one of the most common areas that we see safety issues is in shift work because people are overtired. Again, to me, bang for buck, if we can work on sleep and make sleep into a healthy habit from childhood forward, we have an absolute win, right? So if we can go to the next slide, please. So really quick kind of bio lesson here. So I'll go over this relatively quickly. So we have two cycles of sleep, or two phases of sleep, non-REM and REM. REM stands for rapid eye movement. REM sleep is the sleep that we have when we dream. It's a relatively new concept in terms of the human brain and mammalian brains to begin with. So a lot of species, there's no evidence of like with fish and those kinds of things. There's no real evidence, although fish do sleep. They don't have REM patterns, or there's no evidence of any REM patterns at this point anyway, with based on the science that we have. But we do, as mammals, have REM sleep. That's the dream state that we have. And dreams are going to come back to, because that's another area that is really quite important. Non-REM sleep is that kind of deep restorative sleep, and REM sleep is really important because dreams help us, and that kind of heightened awareness during sleep really helps us do something called neural pruning. So neural pruning, if you think about it this way, think about pruning a tree or pruning a bush. So you have a bush and you have all these branches sticking out in all those different directions. And when we prune a bush, what we do is we take off bits that are kind of sticking out and going in different directions and don't really serve much of a purpose to the bush itself. So we trim the bush to make it nice and formed. That's pruning. Our brains work the same way. So our brains have what are called neural cells. The neural cells have all these little branches sticking out from them. Through the day, we absorb a ton of information. Now, our brain has to determine what's important and what's not important, but it can't do it all the time. It gets exhausted, which is why part of the reason we need to sleep. So here's the thing, right now in your head, what's happening is your neurons are firing off like crazy, right? And that's good. That means you're conscious and alive and alert and aware. So if that's not happening, well, you're probably asleep right now, which I hope you're not. Anyway, the idea here is that when you have all these branches absorbing information all day, they get overwhelmed. It's overstimulating. So you're paying attention to the words I'm saying. You're paying, hopefully, that's why you're here. You're paying attention to the background and behind me here. So you're looking at my purple chair and my picture of Peggy's Cove over there and those sorts of things. You're probably aware of what's going on around you in your own home environment, if there are kids around, or if there's work going on or whatever it is. You're paying attention to all those things, but your brain can't absorb it all. So what happens is our brains are capable of remembering all this if it's necessary, but it's not. So what's going to happen is when you go to bed tonight and you fall asleep, there's going to be a process called pruning where it's going to chip off all the stuff you don't need. That makes it much more efficient. When you wake up tomorrow morning, you're going to feel, okay, I could start the day again. I'm not overwhelmed with all the stuff from yesterday. If you don't have a good sleep, you still have all that kind of residual stuff kind of kicking around, still branches sticking out that haven't been pruned and trimmed off, and they go off in their own different directions, making it really hard to concentrate and focus. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. So what we do with REM sleep is that's when the pruning is really kind of going crazy. It's cutting off all these bits and pieces that we don't need. We have about we cycle between REM and NREM sleep at cycles of about 90 minutes or so. And that's about 5 cycles a night, give or take. One of the things that we have to consider is that, as human beings, we are evolutionary creatures. So we evolved over time and our circumstances have changed. So the idea here is that we talk about midnight, 12 midnight. For most of us, that's really not midnight, is it? When you really think about it, midnight is not the middle of the night. The middle of the night for most of us is like maybe 3 or 4 in the morning, or 2 or 3 in the morning. It's not midnight. So what happens is, our species had been evolved to, kind of follow the sun patterns, and we would sleep when it was dark and we would be awake and alert when it's bright out. Broadly speaking, we still do that, but we end up, because of basic things like fluorescent lights or just light bulbs in general, we end up staying up later. And as a result, our ability to keep awake later has extended, but our brains aren't built for that, right? So our brains are wanting to go to bed earlier, but we're pushing them to stay up later, which means we sleep in a bit later and, it throws things off. But we still have this society, and we have a societal issue here too, folks, which we don't have time to get into because we can't really fix that. But this idea of you have to be up early to get to work and those kinds of things kind of works against our brain sometimes. But this is the society in which we function. Most people have a dip in awareness around mid-afternoon. So after lunch, have you ever sat in a meeting after lunch? Or have you ever been in a classroom after lunch and just watched kids? It's really interesting. What happens is that, and I purposely do this, I rarely have clients right after lunch, and I rarely have in my practice, and I rarely have situations where I'm going to be in or go to a meeting right after lunch. I'll have something later in the afternoon, but right after lunch, it's not a great time to have a meeting, particularly if you're not an active participant in that meeting, if you're just sitting in on a meeting, right? So we get tired, right? And we have that kind of rebound, lack of arousal, we start to drip. So what we do is we have caffeine, okay? I'm gonna be willing to bet, I don't know how many people in this, I see a comment here, a bunch of bobbleheads. Yes, and that's what we are. We're a bunch of bobbleheads. We just smile and nod, but we're not there, right? Now, as a person who teaches at the university level, I've taught early afternoon classes, and they're the worst classes to teach. I will take an 8 a.m. class for a 3-hour lecture, or I'll take an evening class, or later in the morning or later in the afternoon class. The one class I will not take anymore is a 1 o'clock class. I will not teach 1 o'clock classes anymore, because everyone is just, they've got that glassy eyed bobblehead, like they're just awake and alert, but barely, So what we do is we take caffeine. We take caffeine in the morning. And I was going to say, I don't know how many people here use caffeine. I do. Most people I know have coffee or tea. I'm not a coffee guy. This is my go-to is my friendly neighbor Coke Zero, which is 0 calories, which is kind of nice, but I'm sure it's not very particularly healthy. This presentation, by the way, not sponsored by Coke Zero. I'm just saying it's my caffeine delivery system. So what happens is, what caffeine does, and you need to be aware of this, because caffeine doesn't make us more alert. It feels like it does, but all it does is it blocks what's called adenosine, which is a chemical in our brains that makes us feel relaxed. Okay, so what caffeine does is it blocks it, but it doesn't eliminate it. So it's almost like it builds up behind this dam, right? And it builds up and it builds up, and coffee is the dam, or caffeine is the dam. It builds up, builds up, builds up. And once our liver has processed the caffeine, that dam starts to crumble. Okay, and if you've taken caffeine, you know what that feels like. You know that crash that occurs, right? And it starts to fall apart. The adenosine comes out and starts to flow over. And that's that fatigue, that's that calmness, that's that I want to fall asleep, doziness. That's what that chemical does. So we start to get relaxed, and caffeine is basically just a barrier, and it's a temporary barrier. So this is why we suggest not having caffeine at night, because it keeps that barrier up. because caffeine lasts for a couple of hours. And then when it starts to break down though, then you can't get back up. So having caffeine at night not only prevents you from falling asleep, but also makes it much harder to wake up the next morning. So it's really good not to have caffeine after, if as best you can, even after, 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, if you can. A lot of people have problems with that. I know I have a problem with that. Like I will have caffeine up until 4 in the afternoon, which is not the best, but sometimes I needed to get through that post-lunch crash. So that's what caffeine does. Adolescents, by the way, are big into caffeine these days. Those power drinks, energy drinks, that sort of thing, which are pretty intense in terms of the caffeine content. But they, in some ways, I'm not going to say they need it, but they find benefit in terms of their alertness through that mid-afternoon crash kind of thing. Because again, we have situations where adolescents are coming to school and they're dead tired, like their brains are not on. So, and again, this is a societal issue. We should be starting high school at 8:30 in the morning. Kids aren't just, adolescents aren't, their brains aren't on, right? If we started around 10, we're doing them a favor and kept them going until around 5 or so, as opposed to 8 to 3 or something like that. And then that's why adolescents are so active in the evenings, because that's when their brains are melatonin's way off, their circadian rhythms are off, and it's all very different. I just saw Bridget's comment here, and I'm not sure where here is, but she says high school here starts at 9:20. That's better. You still have to be up a bit earlier in Newfoundland. Good stuff. It's always half hour later in Newfoundland, right? But it's good to see the schools making some moves toward that. Largely has to do with transportation and kids in other schools and workforce and that kind of stuff. But anyway, that's just a point to bring up. So we'll go to the next slide, please. Okay, human beings are weird. There are very few species, in fact, I can't think of any other species, to be honest, that actually purposely deprives itself of sleep and then pats itself on the back for doing so, right? Like you hear and you do see these situations where, they're talking to leaders in industry and in business and that kind of thing. And they say, well, what are your sleep at? What do you sleep like? And they're like, I get up every morning at 4 in the morning and I power through the whole day and I start with a workout and I do this and I do this and do this. And I don't go to bed till like 11. Boy, that's unhealthy. That is such an unhealthy message to give people. I like it when I hear celebrities and I hear business leaders and thought leaders say, you know what, I need a good solid 8-hour sleep. I need it. And I protect it jealously. Because in our society, there is this idea that, hey, sleep is for the weak. And I don't buy that at all. I used to, and don't get me wrong, I used to think, okay, I can be much more productive if I'm alert and awake for longer periods of time. However, over time, what I find, and the research has taught me this very clearly, I can be more effective in fewer hours if I get good sleep, or I can be moderately effective over longer periods without enough sleep, but then I start to lose some of my social skills and some of my emotional control. So I get irritable and cranky and those sorts of things. And that's not really helpful to anyone. So a good night's sleep is really, really critical. So about 70% of Canadian teens, get to 70%, folks, of Canadian teens get less than the recommended hours of sleep per night. I don't think it's interesting, but I don't think it's surprising. What is surprising is the number, 70%. That's a lot of people in their teen years who aren't getting enough sleep. So that means we have a lot of dangerous teens out there because they're highly emotional, they're more impulsive, they're more irritable, they're more apt to make judgments or mistakes in their judgments. As a result, bad things happen because they are, think about all those things together. They're impulsive, they make poor judgments. Okay, that's kind of the defining characteristic of adolescence, but this is magnified if they're not getting enough sleep. So this creates, again, lots of social issues. About 20 to 50% of youth have, or 25 to 50% of youth have some type of sleep disorder during infancy, childhood, or adolescence. That can be insomnia, it can be early waking, it can be intermittent sleep, it can be parasomnias like sleepwalking and those sorts of things. but about almost up to half of people go through periods of sleep disturbance. Most adults have had some problems with sleep at some point. Sleep deprivation in adolescents may contribute to driving risk. That's, again, something that we know fairly clearly. If we can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to go through a couple here really quite quickly, because I think we will make sure that you have access to these slides. I want to get to the strategies, but I did want to front load in terms of why sleep is important. So we're going to go through this, then we're going to click through a bunch of slides. You'll still have access to them. And I should say this, if anyone has any questions or any follow-up comments that you want to make after the Q&A period, which is coming up in about 5 minutes, please feel free to let me know. You'll have access to my email, so you can just drop me an email directly, and I'm happy to get back to you. So preschoolers need about 10 to 13 hours of sleep. School-age children need about 9 to 10, somewhere around 9, 11, hours of sleep. Teens need about 8 to 10 hours of sleep, and adults need about the same, 7 to 8 hours. There are sleep changes that occur from childhood to adolescence. Adolescents have different circadian rhythms and different levels of melatonin. That is not their fault, and I want to be clear on that. So if you're having conflict with a tween or a teen about why are you not going to sleep, be mindful of the fact that they don't have control over that. That's their brain. And what they're going to do, and I see this all the time amongst my clients, I can't think of a day that goes by I don't have this conversation with some adolescent and their parent, is that I can't go to sleep at 9 or 10 when you guys go to sleep, because their parents are old. So their parents, being old, go to sleep earlier. I'm not even tired at 9 o'clock. I'm fully alert and aware, and they are. So what do they do when they're fully alert and aware? They're going to do things they find to be interesting and engaging. And for most of them, of course, that involves their devices. So they're on, Insta, they're on Snapchat, they're on TikTok, they're watching YouTube videos. And of course, that's not good, because the blue light keeps them awake. Their level of arousal prevents them from sleeping because they're interacting with other people. So they have to feel like they're on. So that's not the best. We're going to talk about some strategies about that in just a quick second. Okay. For the question about infants and toddlers, it varies a little bit, but even a bit more. So, anywhere from, again, toddlers, it's interesting because they also have naps in there too, which makes it difficult to calculate the true number of hours they need. Some kids sleep really well through the night. So if you're a new parent or have had children fairly recently, that some kids will sleep, from 8 in the evening until 6 in the morning and not without a break. And some kids will sleep 2-hour cycles over and over again. So it's really difficult to identify what is a good overall total. But if we're looking between 12 and 13 hours for infants and toddlers, overall, that would probably be recommended as well. Okay, if we go to the next slide, please. We're going to probably jump through a couple of slides here really quickly. We're going to slip through dreams to go to the next one. I'm going to slip through all these signs that your child is tired too, because they're pretty straightforward. I really want to get to the strategies. So let's go through this one and the next one and the next one. Okay, and one more. Okay. And it's amazing how fast time flies here, because we're at 10:45 or 12:45 to you guys. We have about 50 minutes for Q&A. So let's go straight to strategies. So let's skip over the sleep leaves. This could easily be a 3-hour presentation. So keep going, keep going. There we go. Okay, back one. Okay, the one thing I do want to mention really quickly is one of the signs that we look for with anyone who's having problems with sleep. Irritability is probably the biggest. Lack of concentration, difficult with decision making, anxiety is a significant contributing or a result of not getting enough sleep. And those are just the psychological components, folks. One of the physical ones that you can look for, and you'll see this, and you've done this too, we've all done this, they're called hypnic jerks. So hypnic jerk is that experience that you have, and watch for it. Next time you're in a 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon meeting, you're going to see someone do a hypnic jerk. I can almost guarantee it. And hypnic jerk is this: when someone is talking and I'm in the audience, I'm listening, and I start to get that kind of droopy eye thing, and you have that old jerk thing. That's a hypnic jerk, right? You've all experienced it. You've all seen it happen. basically that's just your body saying, oh my gosh, I'm falling asleep. It's like when you're just about to sleep and you have that thought of I'm falling and you wake up. It's your body's way of saying it's time to wake up, right? And if that's happening during the day, you're way overtired. You need better sleep. So what are you going to do? First of all, create a regular sleep and wake routine. Routine is the key to this whole thing. If we can get to sleep at the same time and wake up at the same time, our bodies, our brains are built on that routine. That becomes really problematic with shift work. So shift workers, and think about who are shift workers here too, right? Because that's important. People who work shifts often work in pretty high dangerous or potentially high danger situations. People who work in healthcare, people who work in law enforcement, people who work in factories where injuries can occur. Those are people who are working shift work, and shift work causes ongoing problems with sleep difficulties. So that's something to consider as well. Improve your time management skills. When someone says they're really busy, to me, and I say this from time to time too, I'll fully admit it. When someone says they're really busy, often that means they just really don't have great time management skills. So basically what I'm suggesting there is instead of being busy, use effective time management skills to block off your time. And that will help you with your sleep because you're not so panicky about, I have to be awake for, 16 to 22 hours a day to get all the things I need to do done. We all have that thought sometimes. I wish I had more time in a day. Well, we only have 24 hours, but I have the same 24 hours that you do, and same 24 hours that Trudeau has, the same 24 hours that Biden has, the same 24 hours that any number of celebrities have, or athletes or whatever. We all have the same 24-hour period. So we have to find ways to incorporate our days within using good time management strategies to make the most of those hours. Clearing your mind. I'm going to give you one really quick strategy. This is a really basic mindfulness strategy. A lot of people are probably familiar with it. But I'm going to combine it with a specific sleep strategy. So this is one you can practice tonight, folks. So basically I'm going to do three things. One is called box breathing. I'm going to combine that with a muscle relaxation strategy, and a cognitive strategy. So it's a physical thing, okay? And it's also a mental thing. So I can't see you, but I want you to do this with me if you feel comfortable, but I'm going to do it anyway so you can watch. So basically we're going to do what's called box breathing. So we're going to visualize a box, okay? And you're going to take 4 sets of 4 breaths because it's a box, there's 4 sides. So it's going to be a deep breath in, hold it for 4 seconds, breathe out, hold it for 4 seconds, breathe in for 4 seconds, hold it for a full count of 4, and breathe out. So we'll do that one more time. Okay. So if you did that, hopefully you're feeling a bit more relaxed, a bit more rested, a bit more calm, muscles are a bit more relaxed. One thing you might have noticed, and you might have heard this as you were listening to me breathe, is when people breathe like that, when do we typically hear that naturally without people doing box breathing on purpose? When you actually hear people breathe like this naturally when they're sleeping, exactly. Okay, so and this is the thing, guys, our brains are super complex and unbelievably intelligent, but really kind of stupid too. We can trick our brains. And if our brains feel that and hear that noise, that what we're doing is we're sending the signal to our hindbrain where sleep is controlled, and it's saying, oh, it must be time to sleep. We're relaxing. We combine that with a muscle thing. So every time you breathe in, you're going to clench a muscle group. It could be your chest, it could be your neck, it could be your shoulders, and it could be your fist. I'm going to use my fist because that's a good visual. So as you're going to breathe in, you're going to clench your fist, hold it, keep it tight, and then breathe out and relax. Breathe in and clench again, and relax. Again, you do that 4 times. And think about it, if you did that with your shoulders when you're trying to sleep, every time you breathe out, you feel more and more relaxed because you're getting more and more calm blood flow. The cognitive strategy I'm going to teach you is something, it came out of Simon Fraser University in just outside of Vancouver. And the researcher came up with this process called the cognitive shuffle. So the cognitive shuffle works like this. You think of a thing. Okay, I'm gonna use this, stapler, okay? So you think of an object that's a real thing. And what I want you to do right now is, since I use the word stapler, I want you to visualize a stapler. Like create that, you close your eyes if you wish, and keep doing the breathing as you do it. And visualize, as you do your box, a stapler, what a stapler looks like, and have it, just a real good mental image of a stapler, okay? Okay, now your next stage of the cognitive shuffle is you're going to take the second letter of the word stapler, which is T, S-T. What's something that starts with a T? I'm going to think of a table. Okay, so T. Now I'm going to visualize a table and do my box. Okay, now I'm going to take the third letter of the word stapler, which is the A, and I'm going to think of a thing that starts with an A, and I'm going to think of an anvil. So I'm visualizing an anvil now. And then we just keep going. And when you get to the R of stapler, then you come up with another word, and then you start with the second letter of that word and keep going. The reason this works, and it works remarkably well, I started using it, like I said, it takes me, based on the app I have, it takes me approximately about 3 to 5 minutes to fall asleep. From the time I turn off my lights and turn on the app to the time that I'm in that deep breathing phase is about 5 minutes. Isn't that awesome? Like, for those of you who have problems falling asleep, this will, I can't guarantee anything, but I think if you try it and practice it, just like anything else, it requires practice. If you try it and practice it, you're going to see great changes. So you do the breathing, cognitive shuffle. And basically what it does is gives your brain enough to play with. Because otherwise, when you're thinking about it, if you're thinking about a stapler, you're not thinking about tomorrow. You're not thinking about your financial situation. You're not thinking about, how you're going to feed the kids, or you're not thinking about getting to work on time because it's snowing or whatever. You're not thinking about it. You're thinking about a stapler. Boring, dull, but enough to keep your brain from going in different directions, right? And it focuses you, makes you more relaxed, helps you sleep. Few really fast ones. Keeping your device limits, 1 hour break before sleep is best if possible. Keeping bedrooms as an electronic free zone, really important. Do we lose audio?
I can still hear you.
Okay. In terms of covering strategies for young kids, yeah, let's go to our next slide. Keeping the bedroom dark, quiet, and cool. A cool bedroom makes a big difference because you cuddle in under your sheets and you feel a need to get like this, and that's how we have evolved to sleep. Expose yourself to bright lights in the morning. So open the windows, bright, get some good bright lights. You can use a light therapy lamp as well if you wish. A relaxing pre-bed wind down. That is critical for the younger kids. For our younger kids, having a predictable pre-bed wind down where you can do some reading with them. There should always, if you can, have a bath. And this is for adults too, but particularly for kids, having a bath relaxes us because it's warm. And then think about this, you're warm and all the way to your bone, you're warm. And then you get into a nice cool room under your sheets. You can't help but feel more comfortable and more relaxed. Okay, go ahead. Next slide. Some things to avoid is sleeping in on weekends, drinking caffeine about 6 hours before bed, watching the clock. Nothing worse than keeping your device by your bed with a clock on. I used to do that, and it was a mistake. So I've turned it upside down now. So my app is still on, my sleep app is still on, but my phone I flip upside down. If you're lying in bed for more than 20 minutes to half an hour, just get up, go to use the washroom, get a drink of water, do something, right? Just get up and then go back into bed because you want your brain to develop a relationship with bed as bed is where I sleep. That's why I don't want, it's probably not best to be spending a lot of time in bed on your devices. Most people do, and I get it, I do myself. But if you're doing a lot of time in bed with your app on or your device on, then your brain is drawing the association between device and bed. That's not what we want. We want bed and sleep to be the connection. Try to avoid hitting snooze, by the way, if you can. Because what happens with snooze is, remember I talked about those 90-minute cycles, you just start to get into a cycle and then it freaks you out. Okay, so anyway, we are at time. So I know we didn't cover everything I wanted to, and there's so much we could cover, folks. If anyone has any thoughts or questions, now would be the time. So we're going to open up to Q&A. And there are some resources at the end of the slides too. So when you get the PowerPoint slides, there are some resources you can look at as well that are really, really exceptional. And I'll hand it back to Pamela.
That we do have a few questions. So one question is it true that night sleeping builds and restores our bodies?
That light sleeping?
Night, like sleeping at night versus, I guess, in the day.
Oh yeah. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. It restores, again, it restores our brain functioning and restores our physical well-being as well. So it's probably the most restorative kind of sleep that you can have. It's a good night's sleep.
Great, thanks. And then how would you work with youth that have more anxious in their, when it gets to getting to sleep, they have more trouble with sleeping?
Okay, so a couple of things. Working with psychologists can be really helpful. First of all, we have to understand what the anxiety is, and having a conversation about what is causing the anxiety, and particularly with older children and adolescents, sometimes they want to talk to mom and dad about it. They want to talk to someone else, and that's fine. If you can get into see a psychologist or a counselor at the school, something like that. Anxiety is kind of the antithesis of sleep, right? So the idea there is to use something like the cognitive shuffle to shift our thinking. It's a lot more advanced than just say, I'll just relax, because we know that just relax doesn't work. The more strategies you try, kind of the better, right? But even that deep breathing helps reduce anxiety to begin with too, because again, it tricks that part of our brain back here, our amygdala, which controls our level of threat arousal, which is active and overactive for people with anxiety. It helps relax them.
Great. Let's see, what else? A few people are asking about the difference between like being a night owl or early bird. Is there an easy way to train how you?
Yeah. Yes. The idea of an early bird night owl is a lifestyle thing. It's not a biological thing necessarily. We have preferences. I personally would say I was a night owl developmentally. Now I'm a bit older, so now I'm more of an early morning person. That's typical for most of us. And what that suggests though is that we can change. So if you have a child that says, no, I'm a real night owl, gradually work that bedtime back a little bit night by night by night, even if it's just a minute or two earlier, and they'll become conditioned, interestingly enough, for the most part, to fall asleep a bit earlier and then wake up earlier as well, if that's what if you want to have a more kind of a stable home situation where they're getting up naturally in time for school.
Great. Wonderful. So we're at time, but thank you so much for your time today and sharing all these great strategies. I do want to share one more screen with everybody so that they can see our promo code.
Oh, there's so much we didn't get to cover. Shoot. Oh, well.
I don't know why it's giving me a hard time now. Technology, There we go. So there's our promo code. It will be sent out in the follow-up email as well. But thanks everybody for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Macdonald, for your expertise and advice. It was nice having you all here today.
Okay, thanks so much.
Thanks.